Hello and welcome to my video where I'm going to be addressing playing as Germany and in particular using the fascist focus tree. I'm going to talk about four different ways that I play the fascist focus tree. The most obvious is the historical path using the historical timeline. I'm going to talk about an accelerated path, a hybrid path, and what I consider the most dominant path. All of these will be discussed with a high level perspective giving you checkpoints or markers that you should try to achieve specific goals. But before I can go forward, I do have to talk about the graphic on the left-hand side, in particular, the five famous historical figures in that image. You do have Cromwell, very famous general from the United Kingdom, Rommel, famous from Germany, Yamamoto, famous admiral from Japan. You also have Zhukov, famous from Russia, but dead center is MacArthur. But the depiction at the bottom of that image is a Sherman tank, German soldiers, the Thunderbird aircraft, the P-47. Yeah, it just, or not Thunderbird, let me restate that, the Thunderbolt, and what appears to be a damaged ME-109. Those were all players in the European theater. MacArthur's known for his exploits in the Pacific theater. So with a little magic, let's fix that image. Now we've got Patton dead center. He's more of a European theater general, and he's known for his exploits leading tank divisions. So without further ado, let's move forward into our first of four paths. And that first one is the historical timeline. And for a game start, it's January 1st, 1936. And following the historical path, on March 28th, 1938, that's when Germany annexed Austria. And this was a good beginning for Germany's attempt at reclaiming its glory prior to World War I. It's reclaiming territory, it's creating pride for the German people, and it's not triggering a war. So this is a good start. That's why I put the text in there right below the HOI 4 historical timeline, but it's a good start. But there's a lack of foresight leading to an absolute collapse of the German military machine. This is a great start. Not even a good start. I consider this a great start. This is followed in 1938. In particular, it begins in October of 38, where Germany triggers the annexation of portions and eventually all of Czechoslovakia. It takes anywhere from 6 to 9 months historically to accomplish this, and it finishes with creating the Slovakian state and annexing all of the western portions or western states of the Czech Republic. Then in September of 1939, Germany invades Poland. Germany has developed its military might extensively at this point, and it executes the invasion of Poland, which was a final straw for the Brits, including the French, which have since joined the Allies, and they give the Germans 2 days to retreat out of Poland. Germany ignores that request, and the Allies declare war on Germany on the 3rd of September of 1939. Now, when I say they declared war, I'm going to do an analogy. This is the equivalent of your neighbor throwing rocks at you over the fence. They didn't break down your fence. They didn't try to storm your house. They threw rocks at it. The reason I say that is there was very little land warfare participation from any of those countries. The Poles mostly fought on their own, but they did begin a bombing campaign against Germany. And they probably sent, and I don't know the details, fighters and attempt to deliver supplies to Poland. But guess what? This war, this conflict ended in 4 to 6 weeks. And in those 4 to 6 weeks, Poland capitulated. Russia pushed in from the east. And that's why that focus tree of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is there. It's to recreate the reality of Germany occupying eastern parts of Poland, excuse me, Russia occupying the eastern parts of Poland and Germany occupying the west. So again, 6 weeks, it's all over. So what did Germany do? Why did they wait till May 10th of 1940 to deal with the Benelux? Well, they planned, they probably did some political negotiations to see if they could just make this whole war thing go away. It failed miserably. So Germany did the best or next best thing for themselves, which is, well, if you're going to continue to throw rocks at us over the fence, how about I knock down your fence and invade your territory? So on the 10th of May through the 22nd of May, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France all fell to the German military might. This is the historical timeline where Germany found its highest success. Now, for the next 12 months, between June 22nd and of 1940 and June 22nd of 1941, the Germans toyed with, and some may argue that it was more than toying with, but attempted to wrest control of the airspace over the English Channel and over Great Britain. It's the Battle of Britain, the air war. The idea behind that air war was to wrest control of those two areas, air control over the English Channel, air control over the southern portions of Great Britain, so that they could execute Operation Sea Lion. They did not succeed, but in an attempt to bolster their success after this miserable failure, they decided to make the worst decision of the war. And that worst decision was to invade the Soviet Union. The expectation of the German military machine was that within 4 to 12 weeks, just like Western Europe, Eastern Europe and Russia would also capitulate. This was far from the truth. The Russians executed a scorched earth policy. So as they retreated, they decimated anything that was still there that could have been usable by the Germans and stretched the logistic line significantly. And this caused German offenses to stall and eventually fail. By the time winter hit in 1941, Germany was really stalled out and freezing, and men were losing their lives, not in combat, but just due to exposure. This was the beginning of the end of the German strength, or the height of the German power during World War II. To add insult to injury, Germany made the worst decision, or I shouldn't say the worst, an additional horrible decision following the Japanese declaration of war on the United States. Germany, Japan, and Italy had a independence guarantee between each other, but they didn't have to go to war because Japan declared war on the United States. They could have withheld that, but they decided to do that anyway. Well, in 1941, the United States had the largest manufacturing capacity in the globe, outpacing most of Europe, thoroughly outpacing all of Far East Asia, China, Japan, all of them combined. The American manufacturing capabilities beat them all. So not only did you unleash the military manufacturing capacity, but you also unleashed the personnel, the people of the United States to participate in the war under the official flag of the United States. There were already volunteers that were participating, but this was a huge influx of personnel that rolled into Great Britain, Northern Africa, and eventually caused the downfall of the German war machine. So, in a nutshell, you can play the historic timeline. However, the level of effort required to succeed here typically exceeds that of the capability of a new or intermediate player. Advanced players figure out a way, they make it happen. But entry level, absolutely, you're not going to succeed. You're going to fail miserably. Uh, those with a medium level of skill will hit and miss succeed. But let's look at the details of what Germany looked like before it made that critically bad decision. This is what a 1939 August 14th start of Germany looks like. You have 79 civilian factories. You have 77 mill factories. You have 13 dockyards and 9 refineries. Well, that's pretty good. That exceeds France. Okay. Does that exceed France and Great Britain combined? No, it doesn't. So Germany's a little behind the eight ball there. Now, Germany's been working those factories pretty hard since 1936. They have a higher supply, but let's look at extracted resources. Oil is the resource that allows you to operate your airplanes, your tanks, your trucks, anything that has an engine, including your Navy. And with 11 oil, you're far short of what you need. With 156 aluminum, yeah, you can fabricate airplanes, but your crippling factor here is that you only have 38 rubber. 38 rubber, even though you may have the military factories to dedicate to building machines, you're going to be short on rubber, which will delay or halt airframe fabrication. So that puts you in a bad place. 6 tungsten. Tungsten is a resource that is involved in hardening, in particular, gun barrels. So that's going to impact your tank production. Chromium also falls into that equation. So you're crippling your ability to manufacture hardened metals. You're not in a good place. Steel, wonderful. You can create infantry equipment into infinity. But one of the ways to succeed on the battlefront is to have hardened tanks pushing through and encircling other troops. You're going to be kind of crippled because of your capabilities or availability. All in all, you're not in a good place. So again, advanced players know how to circumvent this, know how to deal with this. Novice players, game's over for you. But let's look at another way that we could potentially play this. I'm going to call this the easiest path. Playing fascist Germany, but the easiest way. Now, we're going to start off with Anschluss. Well, isn't what that the same thing that was the critical timeline event before? It is. But Anschluss is going to occur 22 months earlier in my playthrough. Anschluss is going to be completed by May 21st, 1936. So you get 22 additional days with 10 additional civilian factories. That significantly jumpstarts the construction capabilities of your playthrough. 10 additional civilian factories this early in the game is a huge bonus. Those 10 additional factories also position you to beeline your 5th research slot. Germany starts with 4. This will get you to your 5 the fastest way possible. I have yet to figure out any other way you could do it faster. So, Anschluss first. Get it done early. Let's follow that up with something that is not standard. Many people label this an exploit. Well, guess what? I'm here to make it easier for those novice players so that you can actually enjoy the game instead of becoming a victim of bad decision making. So very early in the game, you're going to start justifying against the Dutch East Indies. And by justifying against the Dutch East Indies on the 4th of February, that justification completes on the 2nd of October. That's why I've got an October 15th completion date here. It should only take about a week to steamroll the Dutch. Uh, but again, I've got a little buffer here because you're a new player. This solves the oil and the rubber resource availability problem for Germany for the entire game. Not just for a little while, for the entire game. The next slide, we're going to talk about that in details. But again, Dutch East Indies, the war occurs on the 15th of October and or concludes by the 15th of October, and you've solved two critical resource problems that Germany faces. Then, in April of 38, you're going to execute Sudetenland, and all 3 focuses you're going to complete, which will give you a decision of take all of Czechoslovakia, take some of Czechoslovakia and create a puppet state of Slovakia, or simply share with Austria. It's RNG, but it's not uncommon that Austria joins Axis on or before, or on this date, before this date, or shortly after you complete Sudetenland. Just a heads up, Austria wants to be part of the Axis. So you complete that in April. Then, just like the regular timeline, you're going to invade Poland on the 1st of September of 1939. Your industrial capacity, your ability to manufacture military components is so much larger building up to the 1st of September that you don't sweat the bombings that are occurring from the Allies because you're going to start shooting down their planes. You have the uh, Air Force infrastructure in place and the manufacturing capacity in place to dominate the skies. And shortly, that will include the English Channel and the skies, or the air cover over the British Isles. But first, let's take out Poland. This again takes 3 to 4 weeks to complete. Then shortly afterwards, once you've relocated your troops to the borders of Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, you will still execute the Benelux invasion, and you will take them all out, roll into France. All of that will take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, just as the regular timeline takes. But because of better preparation, a better economy, better access to resources, what are you going to do at the end of November? You're going to execute Operation Sea Lion, which will be the naval invasion of the British Isles. Shortly after your troops land on the British Isles, they will push across the entire island, causing the United Kingdom / Britain to capitulate. And upon that capitulation, the World War II will end. And Germany will have access to any and all resources it wants during the peace conference. It can do whatever it chooses to with the remaining non-resource benefiting territories. But Germany, at the end of 1940, if you're a little slow, beginning of 1941, is the most dominant country on the globe. That, to me, is the easiest way to play Germany. Two critical things: get the ball rolling right. Anschluss early, accelerating your ability to construct factories, and resource uh, 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 deficiencies being addressed, in particular rubber and oil, by claiming the imperial holdings of the Dutch, in particular Dutch East Indies, Suriname, which is in South America, and Curacao, also in South America. So, how does that apply itself into the game statistics? Well, let's take a peek. My playthrough most recently, I forgot to capture it on the 14th, but I did do a pause of game and a statistical gathering on the 30th of 1939, right before I invaded Poland. And I had 21 additional civilian factories. I had 32 additional military factories. I had 11 additional dockyards. I had 102 additional oil resources, 124 aluminum, 31 rubber, 7 tungsten, 141 steel, and 7 chromium. I was in a much better position to continue to build the military components to outfit my military machine and dominate Europe, including the naval invasion of Great Britain. Poland falls rapidly, Benelux and France fall rapidly. Shortly after that, you have the flexibility to execute Operation Sea Lion. Now, slightly different spin, because I did take Indonesia away from uh, the Dutch. I do have to put troops out there and that's, I shouldn't say have to put, I get to put troops out there. And the advantage of putting troops out there is I also do a naval invasion of um, British Malaya. And when I invade British Malaysia, I deny Britain access to the Singaporean Peninsula, which is Britain's primary source of rubber. It is a huge source of tungsten, and it has a bonus source of aluminum. So not only have I provided resources to Germany, but I'm now denying at the onset of World War II, the invasion of Poland, I'm going to be denying Britain's access to critical resources for its air force. Take away their rubber, add to my rubber. Uh, Again, easiest playthrough you can possibly do. You're in the strongest position you can possibly be in. There are videos, if you look online, that show people exploiting uh, 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 world tension levels, but it usually requires fairly decent micromanaging your army in order to win. This path doesn't require much, if any, micromanagement of your army. That's a skill that normally comes at your middle tier and upper tier skill set in the game. This doesn't really require that skill set. So, with that in mind, easiest playthrough on the screen. Let's look at an alternate way to play that easy playthrough, and I'm referring to this as the hybrid path. Still doing the same early Anschluss, but if you don't want to trigger World War II when you invade Poland, don't trigger a war with the Netherlands. Don't do that early. Don't take Sudetenland early. When you execute Anschluss and when you do the Rhineland focus, these all create world tension. If you know the normal historical timeline and try to invade Poland in September of 39, world tension is high enough that that provides a catalyst for the Allies to join the war. But if you delay any type of additional world tension actions, which would include starting a war with the Netherlands or executing Sudetenland, if you don't do those things before you invade Poland, world tension drops to the point that you can invade Poland without engaging the Allies or without the Allies engaging you. So you can, without the impact of the Allies fighting and bombing Germany, you can invade Poland. Wrap that up. As soon as you invade Poland, you want to start the focus around Maginot Line. The reason you want to complete that focus is that allows you to, without justification delays, you can immediately begin the invasion of the Netherlands. Now, the game has randomness in it. RNG is a common acronym used. Random number generator is what the acronym stands for, but RNG normally sides with Germany if you only invade the Netherlands after conquering Poland, and the Allies don't participate in that war as well. Now, if they happen to participate in the war, you're going to have some challenges because you're still short on rubber. But if they do not participate in that war, you can do what you just did on the last playthrough, that easiest playthrough, and you can take the imperial holdings of the Netherlands. You can take Curacao, giving you oil. You can take Suriname, which gives you aluminum. You can take some or all of Indonesia, which is going to provide you all the rubber you need for the game and all of the oil you need for the game. Because assuming RNG works in your favor, World War II still hasn't started. Then execute Sudetenland. Choose your path down the Sudetenland focus tree, 3 items. Um, Choose if you want all of it, part of it, or want to share with Austria. Then in 1940, still matching the historical timeline, you can still invade Benelux. Now, because the Netherlands will have already capitulated to you, don't give them back. Accept your 1939 win over the Netherlands and don't return any of their territory. So now it should just be called the Belux because there's only Belgium and there's only Luxembourg. This will trigger World War II for sure. France will join the war, England will join the war, but France will fall just as fast as it did previously. In 6 weeks, you will have steamrolled them. You still have deployed your troops in Indonesia, so you're still taking away uh, rubber and tungsten from the Brits. You're crippling their ability to do manufacturing. And it still positions you for a late 1940 or an early to mid 1941 invasion of the United Kingdom across the English Channel. So this is what I consider a step harder in the direction of playing as Germany. You can still do it, you can still be successful. It's still easier than the historical path. Then finally, I'm going to show you what I consider the most dominant path, but something that violates my nature when I play this game as Germany. And how it violates is your first initial critical milestone. You're going to start a war and you're going to lose. What? Yes. Uh, just like the February 4th justification in the easiest path, you're going to do that justification, but you're not going to justify on the Dutch East Indies. You're going to justify on Yugoslavia. And the reason you're choosing Yugoslavia is because of the four countries you can justify against, Yugoslavia creates the least amount of world tension. You're still trying to manage world tension in this path. Don't create a lot because your second event in your event timeline requires world tension still be low. So you're going to start the justification on the 4th of February. That's when you'll have 50 political power, which is how much you need in order to justify against Yugoslavia. You're then going to wait till October 2nd when the justification matures and you can declare war. You're going to declare war, but you're going to let France and Czechoslovakia, which share borders with Germany, steamroll across your nation. And you're going to take your entire military, which is your land forces, your air forces, and sea forces, and stuff them in that little piece of Germany, which is surrounded by Poland and Lithuania. The reason you stuff everybody there is because they are not taken if you lose a war. You don't lose those things. So when the war concludes, you still have a full 24 division, fully trained army. You still have your entire Air Force and you still have your entire Navy. You're going to lose convoys. You're going to end up with hardly any convoys, but you are going to lose. Now, why did I bother losing? Why did I intentionally lose this war? Well, when you lose this war, Germany, its ideology stops being fascist and becomes democratic. The democratic focus tree is good, but being a democracy and using the fascist focus tree is even better. So, one of the things I mentioned here is you're going to lose a war and you're going to use the fascist focus tree, but do not, until you lose the war, do not choose Rhineland as any of the focuses at all. Choose the economy path, and I would recommend that you stay away from the 4-year plan because the 4-year plan depends on the MIFO bills, and the MIFO bills take away from your available civilian factories and reallocate them to consumer goods. You cannot tolerate that, especially if you have a war this early in the game. You do not have enough civilian factories to survive the 4-year plan if you let your first war occur in October of 36. That's a recipe for failure. So if you choose to use economic focuses, do the recovering economy path. You can do that path and still survive. If you do the 4-year plan, You're just torturing yourself. But anyway, I've spoken enough about getting to a democratic state or a democratic ideology. Right before the end of the war, when Germany is at 95% of capitulation, start justifying. You're still fascist, so you don't have any restrictions for justifying a war. Start justifying a war against the Dutch East Indies. That means in the next 5 to 10 days, to allow the current loss to conclude, you only have 30 to 35 days left till you can invade the Netherlands. So, as I spoke previously in those easier executions of the fascist focus tree, what makes the game easier to play as Germany, you're going to do the same thing and you're still going to claim the same resources. You're going to get you're going to get oil and rubber and aluminum by taking the same resources you were going to take previously. However, you're a democracy. You're a democracy that now can execute the fascist focus tree. And if you pick Rhineland after you've lost that first war, it won't say start, it'll say bypass. So you're going to skip Rhineland, you're going to go down the Wehrmacht um, path, and then the one after that is Anschluss. Now, if you've used your military factories wisely, you should have more than 24 fully equipped divisions. You should have 48 fully equipped divisions of infantry type, and I do 48 infantry, and I take those first 6 oddball non-infantry divisions and I convert them into panzer divisions. So you have a total of 54 divisions when the October War ends. Of the 56, 24 fully trained, you're going to send them over and invade Poland, or not Poland, I apologize. You're going to invade the Netherlands. You're going to take the other 24, put them on the border with Austria, and you're going to take the 6 panzers and you're going to send them also into Poland. Or not, I keep saying Poland, I apologize, into the Netherlands. And that gives you enough military might that you should be able to execute Anschluss uh, by the end of 1936 or shortly into 1937. If it still says you haven't exceeded the number of divisions or number of infantry units required, immediately start building additional land-based units and training them. Release them as quickly as possible. And shortly after the loss of the war and the invasion of the Netherlands is complete, you will qualify for Anschluss, and that can be off your radar as well. Now, this playthrough, I don't care about world tension except for those first 2 critical events in the timeline. I want world tension low during the war with the Entente. The Entente was the former uh, um, uh, the former grouping of countries for that were fighting against the Germans and the Austrians. It was the Entente, and France was the leader. Um, so lose it to the Entente, uh, defeat the Dutch, the Netherlands, execute Anschluss, and then in sometime in 1938, execute Sudetenland, grab territory from Czechoslovakia. Then in 1939, once you feel like your military is prepared enough, trigger World War II. Now, how can you invade Poland if you're democratic? The fascist focus tree unlocks the annexation and the invasion, the war declaration capabilities of Poland. Danzig of war is still a focus tree item available to you, even though you're a democratic nation. So go down that focus tree, declare on those countries, and just like before, you're also going to execute the focus of around the Maginot Line. You're still going to invade uh, Belgium, Netherlands, excuse me, Belgium and Luxembourg. You've already taken out the Netherlands. Belgium and Luxembourg. You're going to take those guys out. You're going to push into France. It's going to capitulate. Because you're a democratic nation and not a fascist nation, the Vichy France option is off the table. You didn't want to create it anyway, but it's off the table. And then finally, to complete World War II, you're going to do just like you've done in the prior playthroughs. You're going to wrest control of the airspace over southern England and the English Channel. You're going to trigger the naval invasion of the British Isles. You're going to defeat Britain on its own territory. World War II ends, but you're not quite done with the events to form the EU. And that's why you became democratic. You want to form the EU. In order to form the EU, you have to have full control over all territories of 6 countries. The first being yourself, Germany. If you were playing as France, you'd have to have control of France, but you would also have to wrest control of all territories of all European territories of the Netherlands, of Belgium, of Luxembourg, of France, but also Italy. Now, there is a commonly ignored as fascist Germany focus that allows you to annex Italy. You're going to execute that focus now. Upon executing that focus, you already have more resources, more military factories, more civilian factories than you know what to do with. But you're now going to focus that effort, because you do know what to do, and take out Italy. As a novice player, it is very common that you can beat Italy, but you beat Italy at a slow enough pace that Italy forms a democratic puppet state during your invasion. They depose Mussolini, form their own state, and if that occurs during your invasion of Italy, give all Italian territory to that puppet state. And the reason you want to do this is you have to manually, after you win the war, reduce the autonomy of that puppet state to the point where you can annex it. It takes 2 tiers of reduction of its puppet level in order for you to choose annex the state. If you are fast enough in invading Italy so that the puppet state is not generated, end the war, take all the territory for Germany, what immediately becomes available is the creation of the European Union. This is something you can't unsee if you've done it before. A typical fascist Germany playthrough leaves Germany with max amount of about 80 million core population. If you play the Kaiser flavor, the monarchist flavor of Germany, you can bump that number, that core population number, core territory state number, up to about 120 to 150 million population. If you form the EU, you have 200 plus million population, and every state in those 6 countries allows full access not only to its population, but also to its construction factories, the civilian factories, and its military factories. And if you thought you had more factories than you knew what to do with simply by defeating the Allies, you're going to be floored by how many you have by forming the EU. This can occur by beginning, mid, or end 1941. If you're a novice player, you can do it by 42-ish. Still, if you want to succeed as Germany and play the fascist focus tree, this is the most dominant way to play the fascist focus tree as Germany. It is an exploit, and I didn't come up with this exploit. I've modified it for my own needs, and I've validated it still works with the current DLCs. But I was introduced this by another YouTuber who goes by Mountain General. He gets credit for exposing me to this option. I'm simply expanding on it and trying to exploit it for the way I like to play Germany. But anyway, let's move on to wrapping everything up. And in wrapping everything up, there are four paths of playing the fascist focus tree that I've talked about. The first one is the historical path. If you want to measure or weigh your testes, do the historical path. If you do it, you're only doing it to prove that you can do it. It isn't making the game any easier. It isn't putting Germany in any type of better position. The fastest way you can position yourself to proving that you can do it is by starting Germany in a 1939 start date as opposed to a 1936 start date. What I showed you previously uh, for the historical path, for the statistics of what Germany looks like, that'll be your jump off point. And if you like doing that, have at it, dig into it. If you've been a frustrated player, do the accelerated path, what I consider the easiest path of playing fascist Germany. If you want to add a little layer of complexity, do the hybrid path, where you have to build synthetic refineries initially, but eventually you should have full access to the Indonesian. And then as World War II initially starts, with less than a month of combat executing, you should have wrested full control of British Malaysia, denying the Brits access to its critical resources, rubber in particular. And then the last one is, if you want to be able to steamroll the globe, do the surprise democratic path. It is the easiest way to form the EU as Germany, in my opinion. You don't have to be a master of micromanaging your troops. Typical front lines and offensive lines with minimal micromanagement will allow you to completely control the battlefield. With that in mind, I want you to reference the logo on the left. Deutschland siegt an allen Fronten. Germany wins on all fronts. That was the point of this video, is to show you that there are multiple ways to play as Germany and leverage that fascist focus tree so that Germany dominates the game. I wish you well and thank you for watching this video, and hopefully you'll tune into future videos where I'll demonstrate the historical, accelerated, hybrid, and surprise democratic paths as separate videos. Thank you again.